Thank you, Lara, for introducing me. I'm Brianna. I am an alcoholic. I want to start by saying thank you to the Seattle group for giving me the opportunity to speak and be of service. This is my first time ever doing a speakers meeting, so 30 minutes feels absolutely terrifying. So I hope you guys will bear with me as I work through my nerves and my voice might shake a little bit. I want to start by saying happy birthday to anybody who's celebrating a birthday, and congratulations to anybody celebrating any amount of time, because if you're an alcoholic or an addict like I am, even just making it to this room and sitting here for an hour-long meeting is a miracle. So I'm really glad to see you guys here. My sobriety date is January 29th, 2018. So I have over 7 years of continuous sobriety. My home group is Women's Daily Reflection in Renton. We are a meditation meeting and we offer childcare. So if you know any women or have any sponsees who need a meeting with childcare, please let them know about us. We do birthday night and offer cake on the last Monday of the month. It's on Mondays at 7 o'clock. I have a wonderful sponsor who has a sponsor, and I work the 12 steps as outlined by the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, supplemented by the 12 steps and 12 traditions. I'm just gonna share my story because that's what I feel like I can't really get wrong. So I had what I considered to be a pretty normal childhood, and the fact that like I never went without. But the reality is that my mom was raised by a mom who left her when she was very young, and my mom left me when I was very young. And so I was raised by a single father, and in our household there was constant use of substances and self-medication. I never experienced any like physical abuse, but there was definitely like emotional and verbal and mental abuse in that house. And I just thought that was normal. I think that was all I ever really knew. And I thought substance use was normal. And when I would see my mom and my stepdad, there was always excessive alcohol use involved. And so in both households, it was just a normal thing. And I remember from a really young age just feeling very like other than, separate from, was extremely self-conscious. Like some of my youngest childhood memories are just feeling so uncomfortable in my own skin. So I was always looking for something, I felt like, and seeing both of my parents' use and alcohol use being just such a normal facet of life, and they were still functioning individuals, right? They had big full lives and families and careers, and so it was just a normal thing. So when I started drinking at the age of 13, it was just a normal thing. It didn't seem too far off. And what happened is I started drinking, and all those thoughts of self-consciousness, of anxiety and of feeling other than, and just not feeling right in my own skin, all of that started to melt away, and I could breathe. And I thought I had found the solution, right, to those feelings. And what else I thought I found was community. I felt like I'd never really fit in anywhere, that I was always different from my friends, and I found people like me finally, and that was a big deal for me to finally have people who did the things that I did and felt the way that I felt. And so my alcoholism pretty quickly progressed into other substances, starting with marijuana use. And by the time I finished middle school, everything had changed, right? Like my childhood friends, I wasn't hanging out with them anymore. The sports that I loved doing, I wasn't doing anymore. If alcohol and substances were involved, I really didn't want any part in it, you know. And I was lying constantly to be able to continue drinking and using. By the time I made it to high school, I was hiding fists of alcohol in my drawers and in my pillowcases, and my entire life had just kind of shifted, right? And it all evolved around alcohol and substances. And after I got to high school, I pretty quickly was introduced to more illicit substances, and so my alcoholism progresses far beyond alcohol. And if that's your story too, I'm glad that you're here, and I hope that you feel loved and welcomed by this program as I have been. And this is in high school when I was introduced to particularly opiates. It's when my alcoholism really took a back seat. But my disease continued to progress, and I did a lot of things that I said I would never do. And I would drink if alcohol were available, and a lot of those nights I don't remember. Um, and yeah, involved doing things that, right, like I'm not proud of. I would wake up in the morning and be like, did I really do that, or what did I do? um, and all the substances that I said I'd never try, right? I tried. All the lines I said I'd never crossed, I crossed, and just everything continued to progress. And I did not. I got sent to an alternative school when I think I was a sophomore, and I think at the time I thought that was a great thing, right? Because that's where all the kids who drank like I drank and used like I used went. So I thought it was a great thing. But I didn't make it out of high school. I didn't graduate. I dropped out before my senior year. And I really didn't see that much of a problem with my drinking and alcohol use. I honestly believe that if I wanted to stop, I could stop. But I just told myself I didn't want to. And I would continue on to absolutely terrorize my family. And I went to treatment for the first time when I was probably 17 years old, only because my parents forced me. And if I went to treatment, then I would have some like manipulation tactic to hold over their head to get them to continue to enable me. So I would go to treatment and detox like more times than I can count. I really don't know. I know that I never went with the intention of stopping until the last time I went. I had the idea that if I could just stop using opiates or other substances, I could still drink normally and party normally and hang out with all the same people that I hung out with. And that wasn't the case. I'd get out and try doing all the same things that I did before, and so my sobriety never lasted. I carried a lot of shame and guilt around my behavior and unwillingness to stop. But like I said, I really believe that if I wanted to, I could. I just wasn't ready. But something happened when I was, I'd say, about 20 years old. I found out that I had a little sister, and her mother had found recovery. She was one of us. And seeing the hot mess that I was, she would say, you should go to a meeting. You should come to a meeting. And she would take me to meetings. And I would usually be under the influence in those meetings. And I really didn't want what you guys had, but it meant I would get some free food, maybe a couple bucks for gas. And again, I would like appease the people who were enabling me, right? I would give them a glimmer of hope that I was actually going to change or do something different. So I would go to the meetings, and I really didn't want what you guys had. But I kept being brought to those meetings, and I don't remember anything that was said. I don't remember like having any profound experience in these meetings, but I do remember like not being judged, just being loved on, like no matter how I showed up or looked or behaved, like you guys just were so accepting. You loved on me, you fed me, you gave me cigarettes, and so I kept coming back whenever she wanted to take me to meetings. But I wasn't ready to do what it took, and I continued on to the depths of my disease, and was I mean, I remember just feeling like I watched days and weeks and months and years go by just in utter darkness, just spiritually broken, um, so full of shame and guilt. I couldn't believe the things that I was doing, the people I was hurting, and and the time finally came, right, where it got dark enough that I really wanted to stop. The day finally came where it was like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I couldn't stop. And so that lie that I had told myself for all those years, that like once I was ready I would, well, I was ready, and I absolutely could not stop. No matter how many promises I made, whether they were to other people or to myself, I I would always break them. Um, and that was a really scary place. And even though I finally reached the point where I wanted to stop, I still wasn't ready to do what it took. My depths took me to like homelessness, like committing all kinds of crimes to feed my addiction and my alcoholism, just causing complete wreckage, not just to my own life, but everyone around me. And I really don't know what happened. I do know that one day I fell asleep, or didn't really fall asleep, but I fell out, right? And I I came to about a day and a half later, and it was the longest that I had gone without drinking or using in years. And I somehow had the clarity to say like to myself, why don't we try and go a little bit longer? And so and so I did. And I remember praying just to make it 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes, 30 more minutes. Let me just make it another hour. Just praying to God, let me make it to tonight, let me make it one more day. And I did, and those days started to come together. And I detoxed myself. And because I had been taken to those meetings, I knew where to go, right? And so I went and knocked on my sister's mom's door, and she opened the door and she said, "You look like shit." And and I said yes, but I'm really ready this time. And mind you, she had tried to help me countless times before, gotten me bed dates, given me all kinds of opportunities, and I never followed through with them. And she said, "Okay, but you just got to do what I tell you to do. You just got to do this. I don't have time for your bullshit." I said, "Okay," and I did. I did exactly what she told me to do, which was I went to meetings every day with the help of her. And she brought my parents into the loop, and they helped get me to meetings. And then when no one else could get me to meetings, she would have people in the fellowship meet me at a meeting. And so I did that, and I got a drug and alcohol assessment so that I could get into treatment, and I actually stayed the whole time. And I actually like did the things that they told me to do and took advantage of my time there. And when they told me I should go into Oxford when I got out, I did that, and I became willing to do what it took and followed some suggestions, and I was able to stay sober. And I got out of treatment and I went into Oxford and I went to a lot of meetings and I did a lot of fellowshipping and I started to kind of put my life back together and started to get some of the benefits of recovery and abstinence. But I had been unwilling to work the steps. And I made it to about 3 years of sobriety, maybe a little bit longer, and the insanity had creeped back in. I was doing things that I would never think I would do in sobriety. I was displaying a lot of terrible behaviors. I was ruled by my emotions. I was putting myself in dangerous positions, risking my sobriety. I was in a relationship with someone who couldn't stay sober. I was still like causing family turmoil. And that just emotional instability and how I was showing up was just eating away at me. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified that I was going to drink or use again. And I had kind of distanced myself from meetings and the program. I'd still go if I felt like I really needed one, and it is only by the grace of God that I didn't drink or use again. The suffering got great enough that I got vulnerable enough to ask another woman to work with me. And I worked the 12 steps, and it was profound, right? Like I was able to see myself clearly finally and be able to do some of the healing work that is offered in this program, and something shifted in me, and I really wish I would have done it sooner, but I finally did it. And, unfortunately for me to usually I have to get pretty low, or the suffering has to get pretty great before I'm willing to actually do something about it. And that's just my story, but I got willing, right? And I opened up this book and I got honest and vulnerable with another woman. And I did the steps as outlined, and I had the experience that I hear a lot of you guys talk about in the rooms. I had a spiritual experience. And I think because of my background in faith, that I do have a religious view. I had this idea that you guys always talking about God and these spiritual experiences, that it had to be some profound white light moment, like some come to Jesus moment. And so I had that expectation that was what was going to happen, and it wasn't for me. That's not what it was like for me. And I'd like to read a little bit out of the big book that talks about the spiritual experience and how it happened for me. It's in the appendices on 567. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think that this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of a spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most empathetically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one needs have difficulty with spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. So that's really what happened for me. I feel like it's perfect description. There was no white light moment, no sudden change in how I felt. But slowly over time, my perception changed and how I came to respond to life. I wasn't so reactive. And I had this sense of profound like peace that everything was gonna be okay if I just did the next indicated thing. And so slowly, right, the fear slipped away, though it does still continue to creep back in. I was just showing up for life differently. Like I was doing what I said I was going to do. I was conscious of other people's feelings and experiences and how I was impacting their lives and how I was showing up in their lives. And I was willing to get out of myself and be of service to other people. And just like it says, I had a profound alteration in my reaction to life. I wasn't ruled by my emotions or or anything like that. I just, all of a sudden my perception changed, and not all of a sudden, but slowly. And I do think that people around me saw it before I did, but I do remember the first time that I realized it, someone had done something that I really wanted to cuss them out for. And instead of like doing that, I had this thought, that this little voice in my head that was like, we don't want to do that. We don't want to show up like that today. And I did it, right? And I remember thinking like, wow, yeah. There is a change happening, right? And so yeah, that was my experience. And I really want to say that the spiritual experience is offered whether you believe in God or not. I think that's really important. Everybody's higher power, something bigger than themselves, can look different. And I'm really grateful and fortunate that I already had like an idea of what my higher power was. And so life looks completely different today. It looks completely different than not only what it looked like over 7 years ago when I got sober, but it looks completely different than it did before I worked the steps 3 years into sobriety. I feel like I have definitely had a spiritual awakening and a mental shift because, removing drugs and alcohol, right? It's a great start. It's a necessary ingredient for me, but but those behaviors still linger, and that way of thinking still lingers. And if I really wanted true freedom, I had to be willing to get into the literature, and that's just been my experience. And I've been rewarded greatly. I feel like you know, the difficulties of life have arisen, and because of working the steps, like I know how to handle them and show up gracefully. And that wasn't who I was before. You know, I get to show up for my father today, who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer recently. And I get to show up with patience and love, and he doesn't have to worry about where I am tonight, right? Like he gets to have peace of mind as he goes through this battle, and I get to join him on the front lines of it. I'm a fully present partner, mother, sister, daughter, friend today. You know, I have a almost 2-year-old, and you know, I never thought I could be a mom. I never thought I could get pregnant and go through a pregnancy without drinking or using, and I did that. And she's never seen me drunk or high, and that's a miracle. I get to pursue like dreams that I never thought that someone like me could pursue. And you know, fear does still play a role in my life, but at the end of the day, when I lay down to go to bed at night, I have this profound feeling that like everything is going to be okay. And I had never had that before this program. I'd never had that before working the steps. I was ruled by fear and my emotions. And as long as I stay close to this program and the fellowship and the literature specifically, and just do the next indicated thing, like I don't need to be afraid. You know, the community that I thought I had found when I first started drinking at 13 years old, like I found my true community here. You know, I keep my circle pretty small just because I'm an introvert, but like my phone is full of phone numbers that if I were in crisis or needed a listening ear or help with something, I know it's full of women that would show up for me. And then I know that other women have my number and could call me, and that I would actually show up and do what I say I'm going to do for them, you know, and that's big. I'm just beyond grateful for this program. I think about like all the things that had to align for it to come into existence, and for you guys to find your way here, and that have trickled down for me to find my way here. And I feel like it is nothing but divine intervention. And I pray that you know, I remain and continue to carry a message that hopefully future generations can find their way to this room. You know, I pray that my daughter doesn't, you know, ever have to find her way, but if she does, that like we're here to carry a message of hope. And you know, I've also gotten to see the rewards that this program offers to people that I love. Like I said, my sister's mom has a beautiful full life due to this program. That relationship I was in with someone that couldn't stay sober back, you know, when I was earlier in sobriety, they have found recovery thanks to this program, and they're the father to my daughter. And to see the gifts manifest in his life and the spiritual experience happen in his life and other friends' lives is such a gift. I know a lot of people who also didn't get the chance to make it to these rooms, and I think it's important to remember that, right? Like this is a huge gift. Very small amount of people like us get to make it here and keep a seat. Or, you know, people go back out and they don't make it back in, and I've had to see that too. And so I thank you so much for keeping a seat for me and allowing me to share tonight. Yeah, that's really all I've got.
Thanks, Bre. Good job.